Hello and welcome back to another edition of ESPN Scrum Reset. Sam, Bruce and Christy Doran in the Schmidt House. And Christy, it's a pretty good time to be an Australian rugby fan, or at least a fan of the Waratahs and the Brumbies, because they fill the top two positions on the Super Rugby Pacific ladder. And what a win it was for the Brums in Christchurch.
I'm going to put my hand up immediately, Brucey. I'm staggered. I can't believe how good the Brumbies have been, but it's just another example of how well drilled this unit is down at the ACT Brumbies. Stephen Larkham, I'll tell you what, his stocks have just gone up so high. It's brilliant, and it's just brought a buzz to things in Australian rugby, hasn't it? Sunday afternoon footy, perfect conditions, and you've just beaten the kings of Super Rugby and in the Crusaders. Unbelievable achievement, and to start it off on Friday night with some more Max Jorgensen magic was amazing.
Yeah, the highlights are there, aren't they? And I must say that I think across the whole on the Super Rugby Pacific side of things, we spoke about last week, maybe the marketing wasn't there in terms of, this is happening. I feel like the snackable highlights, the jerseys have been great, particularly in New Zealand this year, haven't they? The heritage jerseys are some absolute belters over there. I think probably Australia slightly missed the boat, although I rated the Brums last week in against the Force. So, look, it kind of feels like they're catching up with the likes of the NRL and AFL around some parts of it. Hopefully it continues throughout the year. When you've got Max Jorgensen doing Max Jorgensen things, you just want to keep rolling those out week to week.
It was brilliant, and it's the sort of stuff that puts some hair on the back of your arms and your back there, and it is headline moments, isn't it? It is the sort of stuff that gets talked about, like the amount of people that have Max Jorgensen when he burst on the scene, 2 tries on debut, and we were there, and there was 24,000 there at Allianz, and it's those sorts of moments that bring people back through the gates, and so even though it was a slight drop off with numbers there with the Drua. Probably a little bit frustrating that they've got to buy this week, but then they welcome the Hurricanes, don't they? And
week 4, yep.
What a match that is going to be in a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's fantastic, and it's a good time to be enjoying rugby before the winter arrives. You've got the Six Nations at night. But it's good to talk positively about Aussie rugby because this has been killing a lot of people, including us. It's hard to talk up a game when teams aren't winning and players aren't performing, but the Waratahs, when they perform, it's, clearly Sydney starts to take notice and the papers start to take notice. Even the Canberra Times today, leading with the Brumbies result. And so they should. 26-year drought, putting 50 on the Crusaders. I think it's the second time that's occurred there in their history in Christchurch. Extraordinary. And some of the players, their performances, we'll talk more about it.
Well, Chrissy, let's go into, as we kicked off last week with our headline of the week, and I believe yours is that Brumbies win in Christchurch on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it has to be. And the bee in the bonnet is that the Brumbies, they have got a very proud fan base, don't they? And rightly so. But what I don't understand is they've only got about 11 people that Rugby Australia are looking at from a week-to-week thing from an injury prevention, how they're going, and it's about to double the number up at the Queensland Reds. How is that the case? The Brumbies from 1 to 23 on Sunday showed why they should be making the bulk of the Wallabies because they were brilliant. It was one of the best performances we've seen from the Brumbies in a long, long time. And the fact is they've been making the semi-final for years, so consistently they deliver. And I reckon my headline player this week, I don't know if he was my player of the match. I think Rob Ballatini and Charlie Cahill, oh my goodness, weren't they good? But James Slipper in his 200th game, phenomenal achievement to score. The Caden Neville, the 37-year-old. But the player I want to center on is Andy Muirhead. Isn't he just the unsung hero of the Brumbies?
Backbone.
And absolutely is the backbone. Stephen Larkham fought to try to keep him at the Brumbies. They needed to work out financially what the pieces of the puzzle were going to look like. But he will get a Wallaby jersey this year, I reckon.
Could he be the 1,000th Wallaby, Christy?
Could be. Yeah, there's about 5 to go before that number. What I love about him is people ask, what's his X factor? Oh, he's not fast enough. He's not big enough. He's not quick enough. His X factor is consistency.
Yeah, I can't remember one game where he's had a bad one.
every now and again he's had a case of the fumbles when people have started to go Andy Muirhead. He reminds me of Mac Hansen. He is not absolutely special in regards to what he does, but work rate, knows how to win, consistency. Like he showed X factor as well against the Crusaders there. Like what he was doing on the outside with Corey Toole, like what a special try that was to get them up towards 50. But he is, I think, someone like a Les Kiss, who was a former winger in his own, his own right, will respect what he's delivered. And I think the Wallabies team, if I have one thing that I want to say about them in the next 18 to 20 months, they need winners. And Andy Muirhead, to me, is a winner.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm an unashamed Andy Muirhead fan for some time now, scoring that first try that he did when the Brumbies, look, they hit a bit of a brick wall earlier. They had all that possession, hadn't been able to convert that red zone pressure into scoreboard points, and you just thought, geez, the Crusaders are going to come away here, skip away, and that was it 5-point margin at halftime. It looked lean, but the Brumbies, to their credit, were magnificent after the break. We'll come back to them shortly. I want to drop my headline in, Christy, and I'm sure it's one that will resonate with the fans out there, probably a few on this podcast who I was conversing with on the day, and the World Cup ticketing fiasco from last Wednesday and the dreaded yellow bar. Have you ever seen so much chat around the yellow progress bar? For a lot of people, it wasn't moving. I heard sparing few stories of people who actually it did load quite quickly, but then they got in and they were either logged out or they got tickets into the shopping cart and couldn't check out. And it just felt like a nightmare. I know this is quite common with events of this scale, and that I think World Rugby, was it the operating officer or maybe a spokesman, whether it was Chris Stanley or not, kind of saying, well, yeah, we expected there was always going to be high demand and the ticketing platform is working as we expected. But geez, there are a lot of people out there, angry people, not just in Australia, but around the world who've been up in the early hours to try and get tickets. I hope those of you out there who got what you were after, look, there'll be more that come on sale with other releases. We know this is the case. They'll be returned from, tour groups that haven't used up their full capacity. So I'd say don't lose all faith yet if you have missed out. There'll be further opportunities to do so. But look, there are a lot of angry people out there.
It's a case of saving grace, isn't it? Well, let's be frankly honest. That was a debacle. And, my brother, I know, he was trying to get tickets, and eventually he logs on at well before 12 o'clock because you were told basically, here's the code, you'll get alerted when you're in. And it got to about 5:15 before he was given an option. And by that point of time, 95% of the tickets were already sold, or certainly ones in his state or closer to Queensland. And even the ones down in Sydney, obviously, they went like hotcakes, didn't they? Yeah, it was a shambles, I think. And I think it is a case of saving grace there. You don't want to be putting out there that you've stuffed it, and it's probably the quickest way out of a job. But it didn't work well. I think there was probably a lack of communication around what it might look like. And the one thing, it's one thing saying, "Oh, you'll be alerted with an email," when you're able to come back on. But we've got to remember this is a Tuesday. People are working, right? And they can't just afford to spend 4 hours when you're picking up kids.
Yeah,
or whatever
exactly.
It might be. So I totally empathise with the frustrations of people out there. I think it was shambolic, the execution.
That's a pretty good word for it. Okay, let's go back to the Brumbies now, mate. 50-24 over the Crusaders, as we mentioned. First win there in 26 years. Comes on the back of their win over the Blues last season, which was, I think, maybe 11 years, roughly off the top of my head, since they last won there. So, look, Stephen Larkham is ticking these milestones off as he goes. And I want to draw you to Jamie Pandaram's column or post-match report reaction in News Corp Press later that afternoon. Would have been in the papers today, this Monday afternoon as we're recording, suggesting that it could have catapulted Bernie Larkham into consideration for an All Blacks assistant role. And I think a lot of people, if they were reading that this morning over their cornflakes, would have spat those out very, very quickly, because that is the last thing Australian rugby wants to see. As you understand it, is there any truth to it? It kind of feels like it's a shot from nowhere. But if you're Bernie Larkham, on the flip side, would it be the worst thing to jump across to the All Blacks for an 18-month run to the World Cup?
I don't think so. I think it would, in terms of the CV, you go over and you do wonders with the All Blacks, or pick where you want to go. But I'd heard this rumor for about a week, maybe a week and a half.
Okay.
And is there some links? I'd heard links to him to Japan. Was he talking to people like the Dave Rennies? Is that where the confusion kind of comes? Sometimes it's a bit of scatter noise, isn't it? And you've got to obviously verify it. I don't think he would do it, even if he was offered it. He might, but I think it would potentially have the capacity to derail the 2026 Super Rugby campaign for him, and I think his number one goal is winning.
Bring a title to Canberra.
Yeah. If you win a Super Rugby title with the Brumbies in I don't know if it's the absolute best tournament in the world, but in terms of the competition, in terms of preparing All Blacks, and not so long ago as Springboks too, one of the toughest comps in the world at the very least. You pick where and your asking price. You can go to Japan, double your wicket very quickly. He still might do that, and maybe that's his next venture. But I think his number one goal at the moment is the Brumbies. But maybe the more pertinent question is should he be the Wallabies coach? Should he be the person taking over from Joe Schmidt? Like it's a bit unfair because Les Kiss has already been that person, right? He's already in. He's clearly coming down to replace Joe Schmidt. But I think there was no clear answer. Discussion. We haven't heard it yet from Dan Herbert, Phil Wall, Peter Horn. Why was Stephen Larkham not looked at closer? And
look, I think there's a lot of people out there who would be asking that very thing. I think we mentioned it last week, taking the Brumbies to, back-to-back semi-finals, just missed out on that top two place last year when that controversial game against the Crusaders down in Canberra. And look, haven't they just wiped that slate clean now on the weekend with what they've done? But yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I tend to think that it would be a big loss, but I guess, Rugby Australia's made its bed, for the next, to end of 2028, I think Les Kiss's deal is. So, look, Bernie's probably thinking, well, I've got at least 2 years to kill up my sleeve here. Do I hang around the Brumbies? Is there, an assistant role elsewhere in the world that gets me that, international coaching experience away from Australia, which he had, of course, under Michael Checker? Before the deterioration of that relationship. So, look, it's not one you want to see, but you just see that Bernie is obviously he's going to have options. That's the ultimate reality. He should have options because everywhere he's gone, he's actually done well. The Wallabies in 2015 make the World Cup final, and who's the assistant coach? A very young Stephen Larkham who was methodical, had a very clear picture around how he wanted to play the game, and he always has since that point in time. And things clearly got a little bit messy towards the end of his tenure with Michael Checker and the Wallabies, and maybe that stain has lasted and perhaps lasted too long. The knock on Stephen Larkham has been his communication, and I think the reality is the actions have spoken louder than perhaps the rumours around that. But it's he's done very well, even when he went to Munster. Like, that's proper experience that he's had under a coach that's done great things recently at Bath, right? I think I would not hold it against him if he went to the All Blacks. Perhaps the current Rugby Australia administration would. They're clearly in control of the Brumbies as well. So, yeah, I think they've got to be careful. And you wouldn't, Dave Rennie and Jamie Joseph, if they're the two leading front runners, of course they're going to have conversations with people like Stephen Larkham because we're very late into the World Cup cycle. Yep.
They need to be looking at top quality assistants. As we know at the moment, Tony Brown, I know things can change. I still think there could be a change perhaps if Jamie was in there. I reckon he'd be able to squeeze that arm a little bit more of Tony Brown. But I think you'd absolutely be looking at him, and I think they would be too.
Do you feel as though that there could be one more likely than the other? That Dave Rennie, obviously with those links to Australia previously, and I know that's probably when Bernie was overseas at Munster at the time, or a Jamie Joseph, who is, incredibly well respected in the coaching ranks, that I don't know the relationships, if any, if Bernie has got with either of these guys. But on the surface of things, do you think there's one more so than the other that might be able to convince him to say, righto, Bernie, we're here, come and have a crack?
Possibly Dave Rennie. But that's because he's got ties to Japan. I think he would be looking for what's next in some ways. Like coaches always want to be tested. They want something
We see it with
new.
Vern Cotter, right now.
Totally. And it's that period with the Brumbies where he's been there for a few years now. This is perhaps the sweet spot. Maybe it's 2027, but it feels like, like the last 2 years I felt like was the sweet spot, and maybe they'd missed that. Maybe it's even premature that we're talking about the Brumbies in such rosy ways, because let's be honest, it's 2 rounds into the season. There's a lot of footy to be played, a couple of injuries, and all of a sudden that depth starts to get tested for the Brumbies, given that they've already lost half a dozen players. But if they get to a period of halfway through the season and they can welcome back Alan Alatoa and Tom Wright, well, then there's some serious icing on that cake. But yeah, I think Dave Rennie, what do you think?
It kind of feels like the natural, if you were to line them up against each other and have a, your opinion on one, it feels like Rennie, with those links to Australia previously, perhaps, similar temperaments potentially. Although, Jamie Joseph is also a fairly, comes across as a fairly relaxed individual. His training methods are the exact opposite of that. The more you read about from former players who've worked with him, either the Highlanders or in Japan or at Japan. So look, I, for one, I hope it doesn't happen, but you couldn't blame Bernie. He's his own man. He's got, goals to coach the Wallabies. He's made that clear at some point. So I think we'll see it at some point. I think there's a question there. I'll just bring it up now, whether, he and Dan McKellar, with us gazing forward deep into the crystal ball now, here that they're the 2 most likely to fight it out, if things don't go so well for Les Kiss.
Before we get there, my final point there, three points, really quick ones. So one being, I don't see the All Blacks going too far from the New Zealand school of thought.
Agreed.
Like, it's a bit like the Australian cricket team. They don't, I know Mickey Arthur came in at one point in time.
How'd that go?
Yeah, didn't finish well. But it doesn't happen often that they, maybe the assistants for a provincial team, we saw Ronan O'Gara go down to the Crusaders, but it doesn't happen often, does it? So I think they would be very reluctant to go away from the New Zealand rugby DNA. Secondly, I think that Stephen Larkham considered himself head coach these days. I don't know if he would be prepared to take a back seat at the moment. And I think thirdly, he wouldn't, and I've already made this point, but I think he wouldn't want to derail the potential of a Super Rugby title this year with the Brumbies.
Hopefully, Olby and Edward Ellis, both kind of similar questions in the same vein there, guys. That kind of gives you a bit of a background for that one. One here on Charlie Cale, I guess sort of we spoke around last week, should play 12 for the Wallabies, has the skills, speed and defence, save the back row for bigger body to compete in the international game. Now, I was speaking around his ability to be that hybrid player last week, but you can't not help by impressed by what he did again on the weekend. And he's got that X factor about him, hasn't he? Like that ability as a forward to turn half chances, not even half chances, like that break he made late, just this power and the speed to get away from that defence. Look, you said he's probably going to be in a Wallaby jersey again before too long. And, right now it's hard to argue. You just want to see him stay injury-free for this season.
That's the only thing holding him back. If he manages to stay injury-free, I think he'll be as big a name as Max Jorgensen will be. He's a phenomenal talent. What did you like most from the weekend? Because for me, he scored tries. He stole a couple of line-outs. I loved him and Rob Valentini getting under Lester Fainga'anuku and preventing a try, because that was a crucial period midway through that second half. And then they scored not long after. That was a big moment, I thought.
Well, he's a threat in all parts of the game, Christy. And you mentioned the line out there. The Crusaders line out was reduced to an absolute, shambles, wasn't it? Clearly the win was playing a part, but his ability to get up and challenge, he is so athletic. He has got that vertical leap that can just be the difference between getting up that fraction of a second sooner to get up and make those steals at line out time. And the defence is right there too. Probably not too many guys. He looked upright when he scored off the back of that 5-metre scrum that the Brumbies had there at the end of the first half. And you thought, oh, geez, he's going to get held up here. But the leg drive and the power just gets him over the line. So
you're smart going for the halfback there as well.
But, you got to take those opportunities. That's good game knowledge and now. So good luck to him. Look, they've got the Blues coming to town this weekend back in Canberra. And you just hope they had that slip up last year, didn't they? The Brumbies against the Force. They went away and won in Fiji in week 1. and then lost that home game, high-scoring affair to the Force in week 2. And outside of that Crusaders decision later in the year, probably cost them that top 2 finish. So if they put another win on the board, they're already ahead of the game in terms of home and away, aren't they? They've got 2 wins on the road, bonus points to boot. Look, we might be getting a tad carried away. I know that won't be the case with Burnie and Canberra, but I guess to come back to your original question, what did you like from a broader sense around that Brumbies performance? And I just love the fact they didn't go away from their game plan. Like early on when they were rebuffed repeatedly by the Crusaders, and sure, they probably got the rub of the green on a few penalties, but that was just weight of possession and territory and their control. Very few turnovers. And Declan Meredith, I spoke about him before the season. I thought he was going to keep Tane Edmed out of that jersey at least to start with, but I love the way he straightens up, the shoulders square to the defensive line. He's not afraid to have a crack. And to me, I'm not making a change in that 10 jersey. Tane was very good when he came on late in the second half as well. But I'm a Declan Meredith fan.
Yeah, and clearly Stephen Larkham he trusted him, he's backed him, and he's delivered. And it was another outstanding performance from Declan. Had he managed to take that ball just before half-time, 19-14 could have easily been 24 or 26-14. Right across the board, they played very well. You look at, Lockie Shaw. Like he came through last year, didn't he? But he's managed to, in the absence of a Nick Frost, and Caden Neville's taking him in under his wing, and they've complemented each other really well. Yep. I think, the Rory Scots just, it wasn't a standout game by any stretch of the imagination, but they're doing their job, and that's what the Brumbies do so well. Well, Ryan Lonergan, like 77 minutes, I think he played on the weekend. A big Bumford tackle there.
On Sever Reece. Yeah.
So I think he was helped by someone dragging him down, and so that he was already on the way down before he got smoked. But that's leadership. I think he's got good energy, Ryan Lonergan. I still think he's got the best pass in the country.
He was slick yesterday.
Yeah, he wasn't treated well enough on last year's end of season spring tour, and he just wasn't backed in by Joe Schmidt. I'd love to see him backed in. He's a winner as well. And the leadership, we keep talking about it. But it's a lovely combination that's developing there. From what I understand, Tane Edmonds, rather than being despondent about going down to the Brumbies and then starting on the bench and having someone go successfully in Declan Meredith, I think he's loving it.
Probably eases the pressure on him too.
Eases the pressure. What an introduction for him. And the Brumbies are winning. It's a happy environment. It's a new environment. So I think it's very good. Ollie Satsford did his job, straight running.
No one was under sort of a 6, even a 7 out of 10, I thought. Sure, you had your standouts. You mentioned Valentini. I think it was a game-high 20 carries. Kale, Muirhead, Meredith, we've spoken about. Lonergan, slips in his 200th game. Billy Pollard was good. A couple of good charges there. I don't think anyone came out of that game thinking, you know what, I did it tough out there today. They were all minimum, probably 7 out of 10.
And the guys off the bench as well.
Yep.
Aaron, like a pretty young hooker, but he's, second, third year for him now, and he's showing what his worth is. Reece Van Neck as well. Great job, but slips against Fletcher Neal. Like that was one of his better performances, I think. And a 200th game is just extraordinary. The Brumbies clearly got up for him. There was a lot of reasons to get up for that game. And now how they respond to the Blues, who weren't brilliant against the Force, but obviously way too good in the end. Maybe they welcome back Beauden Barrett this weekend as well. But, yeah, it's a big one for the Brumbies to go, no, we're here, we're making a statement, we're not dropping games that we want to. And it's obviously their first game at home this year too.
Okay, that kind of feels like enough on a brilliant Brumbies win, and big ups to everyone down there in Canberra. One more.
Where's it rank for you in terms of victories?
Yeah, good question, mate. For me, I think it's the best win certainly since that semi-final win over the Bulls over there in Pretoria about 2013 when they went on to lose to the Chiefs, gave the Chiefs a red-hot crack the following week. You might remember, I think it was Jake White in tears, still the coach at that point. And to win over there on the high veld, having travelled over, was fantastic. But, I mean, this game, Sunday afternoon, this is tailor-made for the Crusaders. And I think the lasting image for me from yesterday, Christy, that stands out was Will Jordan looking completely bereft when he got penalised for that obstruction, bringing the ball back. They had to kick very smartly in that second half because they were playing into that wind. And the chase, when you're playing into something like that, you've got to kick well, but the chase has got to go with it. And I thought they did. And to see him just kind of like, it was almost a look of defeat at that very moment, thinking, well, this is just not my day to day. And you never see that with Will Jordan.
No, it was a big moment in the game because they just lost Neville to the sin bin, I'm pretty sure. So it was a huge moment to be able to flip the pressure around. We haven't even spoken much about Corey Toole, but that try there at the end just shows his sheer pace and what he can do to turn someone like a Sever Reece inside out. It was a phenomenal performance. The celebrations, if you haven't seen them on Instagram, the celebrations with slips in the middle of it, worth the watch.
I'll have to go and dig that out myself, mate. Thanks for the tip there. Okay, let's come back to Sydney on Friday night. The Waratahs defeating the Fijian Drua 36-13. Look, it's another bonus point win. They're a perfect 10 from 10 and great position to go into the bye in round 3 and look ahead to a big game against the Hurricanes in round 4 on Friday week. But to me, we're talking about lasting images from the game. From this one, it was Dan McKellar getting up in the coach's box on multiple occasions, furious. And a lot of that was to do around their handling, some of their decision-making at times. A couple of kicks from Harry Potter, or one in particular, certainly had me yelling at the TV. But they still come away with all 5 points. There's a lot to be happy with, but there's also a lot to rock up to training when they get back from maybe a couple of days off, I'm not sure, and say, look, guys, in places we've been pretty fortunate too so far. We've got a hell of a lot of work to do. We've got 10 points on the board, but still the competition really starts now.
Yeah, it does. And fair play to them. They haven't been perfect, but they've done the job. They've brought physicality. Their defense has been pretty good, hasn't it? Their set piece has been perhaps surprisingly much better than people thought. But you and I both touched upon this pre-season. The Tars under Dan McKellar in second year were always going to be better than year one. And I think we've already seen that. Everyone looks much tighter together. They look more harmonious, and there's layers that have been developed. And a couple of those players that have come in, like your Matt Phillips and your Pete Samus, have just given them that extra little bit of quality around the park that's been necessary. But it's a strong start. We've got to remember that they had a strong or a reason in terms of a wins-loss perspective. They had a good start last year as well. But 2 from 2, a couple of bonus points. They finished the match very well. And Max Jorgensen, I thought, was a bit unlucky not to have 2 tries in about a minute.
Yeah, forward pass.
I didn't think it was a forward pass. What did you think?
Not clear and obvious to overturn it, I don't think, for the second straight week running. We mentioned the Wonder Louis liner up there in the Six Nations that probably cost Italy at least a draw against Ireland. But yeah, I don't think that you could definitively make that call on the vision that we had. Surely the touchy's in the best position there to make that call at the time.
Yeah, look, thankfully it didn't cost him, and it probably cost the moment, but it didn't cost anything else, did it? So, people like Harry Potter just struggling a little bit, maybe trying too hard. I think the question for a lot of people still remains around Joseph Kusaswali, and it's probably something we're going to be talking about for a long while. I think the other thing is James Hendren for the second straight week got to give that pass to Max Jorgensen. He's the best finisher in Australian rugby at the moment, and twice he's gone himself. And I like him. He's a good young kid. He's fitted in pretty well, hasn't he?
Yep.
But pass it. Pass the ball.
Pass the ball, son. On that very topic, Cyber K, thanks for the question. How do the Tars get the ball into Suoli'i's hands more? Move Crichton to 12, Walton to 13, and Joseph Okuso Suoli'i to 15. Look, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know whether that is on the table at the Waratahs in terms of a bit of a backline shuffle, but there is no doubt that right now the Ferrari is stuck in the garage.
It's not getting out of first gear.
It's not getting out of first gear. We didn't really see him make any impact on the game until about the last 5 minutes. He had that run down the short side over on the far touchline. Look, I spoke about it last week. In the centres, to me, there's too much traffic there. He's not a guy that's got great acceleration. He's got great power, clearly, but I think, what are we now, over 18 months into his rugby career, teams know that if you get him early, you might still give up a bit of gain line, but he's not going to do the damage that he might do with a head of steam up. And we saw that a couple of moments in week 1 where they're able to bring him in with a little bit more space, a head of steam, offset piece. But in general play right now, he's kind of flat-footed, and I think that is half his trouble.
Yeah, I'm convinced he's a back three player. I don't think he's a midfielder at the moment, and he's doing that because maybe the Tars don't have too many other options. But,
and that's the reality too. They are light on in the midfield. It's why they've got Angus Crichton coming last year, obviously for multiple other reasons as well. But it is Walton and Joseph Akusa-Suoli and the bloke who came across from the Force.
Yeah, George Pullman.
Thank you.
I think they see Pullman as a player who can potentially help in that area. Obviously not there at the moment. Lawson Crichton didn't have his greatest game, did he? But Jack Debrasini, what he's offered off the bench has been superb so far. And in a similar way of allowing Tate Edmund to find his feet at the Brumbies off the bench behind Meredith, I think there's merit for Debrasini to continue playing a similar role what he's doing at the moment. I think the other thing as well is Suaalii will attract, and he does attract players because of his size, confrontational ability. So that does allow space elsewhere, doesn't it? And you can't forget that. But I do think ultimately Les Kiss sees him as a back three player. I think it's a matter of time. But when with the Waratahs last year, he was at his most potent, wasn't he? When he was in the back three, particularly at fullback.
Yep. Hard to argue. I guess dig a little bit more deeper into that Waratahs performance. The handling, as we said, wasn't great. It was a sweaty night. It feels just humid every bloody day here in Sydney at the moment. I'm sure you've all got the aircon cranking at home if you're in the Harbour City. But a couple of decisions from Crichton in particular, probably passing balls he should have just caught and taken the tackle with. And someone said to me that when he actually does take the line on and straighten up himself, he actually looks a bit of a threat. Like he has got the ability to get his shoulders and hips through and at least breach that gain line. So, look, it's week 2. Clearly, they've got new players in that back line and Hendren at the back. And, Suaalii coming back into that midfield partnership with Walton after he missed the back end of last year and a chunk of the start of the season as well. So these combinations are still starting to develop. But I guess the big takeaway has been just how impressive the Waratahs pack has been so far this season. I come back to Matt Phillip again. I thought he was excellent again on the weekend. Charlie Gamble, another strong game. And Pete Samu having his wife just given birth, I think was it that day, that morning. Incredible story.
Ethan Dobbins
as well at hooker, and my man Ioane Moananu off the bench. Read more about him on ESPN from Friday. Look, it feels that, as we said last week, it feels like a better McKellar style forward pack, and through 2 weeks, you'd have to say that the improvements are already noticeable.
Absolutely. Think about we're talking about the forward pack. That's McKellar's DNA, isn't it? And that's what I love about Dan McKellar. It's not necessarily a complicated game plan. It's all about work rate, effort. They train hard, discipline. Like the culture of the Waratahs needed to be flipped upside down, didn't it? For years, like let's say a decade, almost as soon as Checker walked out the door, things at the Waratahs weren't quite right. And the standards dropped, the quality dropped. And the coaching merry-go-round started, and it probably wasn't helped by the move away from Allianz to the demountables at Daceyville, where it just looks second rate, and it takes a long time for the culture to change, to get up to speed. You can put that same group in a shiny new place, but I think some of the hangover period of the culture continued for a long, long time, and McKellar cracked the whip big time. He came in almost like a way that Michael Maguire would have done up at the Brisbane Broncos. And he might not have had the immediate success, but I think that'll come because it really needed a complete facelift there, the Tars, around attitude. And the Miles Amateuros and those sorts of players, he's going to be continuing to work on. And we're not going to see the best of Amatezero for another 3 years, I don't think.
Yep.
It's going to take him a little while. But you can see that sort of stuff, the pack mentality has already changed. And the Waratahs tend to be able to boss them around, to really step up, to go, we've got to get here. And I like what you said there around Crichton. When he takes the ball to the line, I think that's when he's at his best, when he straightens up. I know that John Connolly raves about him. He's a big fan of him. He's been pushing for him to get a better, longer go. Maybe we'll see that now.
Indeed. Big game for the Waratahs, as we said, coming up after the bye, round 4 against the Hurricanes. I think it's back a Friday night. Again, Hurricanes, unfortunately for them, have got a few injury concerns to start the season. Sorry to see Brett Cameron go down with another, what looks a longer-term injury. Looked in a fair bit of pain on Friday in that opener. A big win for them over Moana Pacifica. So watch the team list for that one next week. But I think, as you said, disappointing that crowd was back to around about 13,500, coming down from 16. You would think for a Hurricanes game, they would love to get back north of 16 again. You know, some excellent Kiwi players on display, Geordie Barrett and Asafa Almur, and they've got a great back row. So get along to that one if you can.
Like, they have got one of the best back rows going around there. It's going to be a fun game to watch, that one. Harkin probably maybe could be the 10 there, but they've got pace out wide. They've got some serious physicality. The Canes always throw it around, don't they, as well? So Cam Roygaard will be back starting, you imagine, as well. And geez, isn't he a player?
He certainly is. Let's go to the Force, mate, quickly. Look, disappointing again. I thought what was great from this game was the side of the hill there at Joondalup Sporting Precinct. Had that kind of bit more of a park sort of shoot shield feel about it, didn't it? Club rugby around the place. But again, they let themselves down with the performance. I think it was better than the week before against the Brums, but they had no line speed. It was just too easy for the Blues for my eyes to get that rolling, that front foot ball. And while they kind of stayed in touch and it was a bit tit for tat there for a while, you always felt that the Blues didn't really have to get out of third or fourth gear. They weren't really ever under any significant, pressure at losing that game in my mind. The Force go to 0-2, and probably the pressure goes up on Simon Cron.
The pressure is right up on Simon Cron because you look at the next 3 fixtures, and we spoke about it last week. We thought, oh, geez, if they drop the one against the Blues, it's 3 on the road, and then it's a very long way back. And good luck being a CEO and Eve O'Connor going, we're going to back in the coach if they're 0-5. Like, it's a big opportunity against Moana Pacifica. It's a huge game for both franchises. They're going to be desperate to get it. I don't think the Force are going to go away in any of these games. That's a hard-working group, but it comes down back to what we spoke about previously. It doesn't look like a cohesive team. I think there's too many ball players coming on in that second half. They're getting looser there as well. And I don't see the punch through the midfield that they need to be able to.
Agreed.
I just think that's their struggles at the moment is the midfield. They haven't got it right for a while.
We got Hamish Stewart and George Bridge, who aren't the biggest guys getting around the world. I mean, George Bridge was a winger at the Crusaders and the All Blacks for a long while. Hamish Stewart is a great defender, but he's not going to bend your lines. He's going to be able to put a head through on a broken defensive line, but running into traffic, it's going to be a long afternoon for them.
Yeah. You scratch your head around, well, how do you find some solutions there? I'm all ears. Like, is there a path forward for Dylan Peach to kind of reinvent himself a little bit in the midfield?
I actually thought, where is Dylan? Is he back soon? Or
I don't think he's too far away, but he's a bigger body. He defensively would be able to stand up because he's a former 7.
I even mentioned this last year at some point from memory, yeah.
I'd love to dig that tape out.
You don't believe me?
No, you might have said it. But I think they need a change up there in the midfield. It's not working for me, and I don't think you want to leave it too late before you change something up there. It doesn't seem right. But when you're bringing on and you've got a Dono, a Beale, a Max Bury as well, like there's only one way to play that game, and that's to start throwing it around a little bit. But unfortunately, that invites errors into it. I'm not sure if they know how they want to play the game. You look at the Brumbies; they know how they want to play the game, don't they? They don't go away from it either. And I'm not sure if I can say the same about the Force.
A couple of questions in a similar vein here, one from Hugh Tyndall and also from Prendall around, I guess, the Force's, longer-term future. What's, the level of Twiggy's commitment? He's clearly got a lot on the table. I think it's actually his wife who might be doing more on the Force side of things, or ex-wife. In terms of the running of the Force, I guess, what's the extent of RA's financial commitment in there? And then also, almost a dire question from you. Is there a chance that we come back to 3 Australian Super Rugby teams at some point?
It's a very real question. Like it is a dire question. You don't want to be speaking about it. No one does. Like it's not a fun subject. There's careers at stake. There's coaches. lack of opportunities. But in very real terms, it's having 5,000 people. I agree. The spectacle, it looked like a good sight on Saturday. I really enjoyed seeing the hill packed, and I hope they had a great time. Like, it was a pretty entertaining watch.
Yep.
But 5,000 people isn't going to help you. 5,200 or so. They've had 10,500 people come through the two. They're not going to be there now for a few weeks, which is what they wanted. They wanted blocks away.
Had to start well.
Yeah, they had to start well. I'm pretty sure they paid for opposition teams to come to Perth this year for their preseason hit-outs. Now, that costs money as well. So already the bottom line is being stretched, and we're not even a month into the regular season. So, yeah, I think post-27, what the future of Super Rugby is going to be a serious subject.
And all against the backdrop for the force of the Perth Bears coming in the NRL and the aggressiveness of rugby league that is going to be, and Peter V'landys in that market. They'll throw cash at that until the cows come home. They're about to, according to PVL, unveil a $1 billion deal going forward, and they've got over 200,000 participants, but PVL including beach rugby league and touch in those numbers. So, you and I throwing the ball out the side here, mate. We might classify as rugby players as well at the same time. But we'll let you bicker about that one. Okay, let's go away from Super Rugby, mate, because I'm conscious of time. We've got a couple of other points here to touch on today. The global season. Now, a nice longer form article from Ian Payton in the Sydney Morning Herald today around the meetings that are taking place soon up in the Northern Hemisphere. Basically, the kind of shape of game meetings, get all the major unions together and discuss what is happening. Clearly, Brett Robinson, former Wallaby Australian chairman of World Rugby, Mark Robinson, the former New Zealand Rugby CEO, has just gone up there as kind of head of rugby, chief rugby, in that position. So, look, there's at least some Southern influence there at the moment. But I guess to focus in on the global season, I know you wrote about this last year as well, that there's obviously the push from the Springboks because it would have better aligned for them, and they would no longer have to play kind of year-round footy between club rugby in the north and test rugby in the south. But it would mean bringing the rugby championship forward to probably, a mid-February, maybe even late February, early March kind of time slot, playing that before Super Rugby, and then further breaks in the year for inbound tours as well, and then obviously heading overseas up north as well. So, look, I guess what's your gut around this? Do you think this is a legitimate possibility that at some point we will get to this global season and that Australia might be warming to it?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I think it's a matter of time. You're right. I wrote about it in early October about the February push for the Rugby Championship. And I think it'll grow weight. South Africa are an influential player, but they're also the 4-time World Cup winners and back-to-back ones, right? And they, the super sport, the coverage offers a lot of money up there as well. There's difficulties there with their domestic season, absolutely, when it comes to, the Championship Cup. I think people are conscious that Super Rugby is got some it's got some issues. It's got some issues where it's played and faced in the game. New Zealand has been one of the people that have probably been reluctant to this because they like to give their players an extended break from that, that Christmas kind of time, and maybe an earlier start to a rugby championship might change when breaks can be had, how long the breaks. But I think you'd see absolute buy-in from Super Rugby franchises because it would have the capacity to lengthen the competition. And maybe it's played, still, if there's the July test, maybe it continues to play in the background. Maybe it has a month off and then it continues for a couple of more months after that. So I think it gives you more freedom around when you're playing your Super Rugby. Is there the capacity to do a Super Rugby Oz as it is a Super Rugby Aotearoa, and then having a championship afterwards where you're getting your best sides from each of the different countries and coming together? It definitely provides more options on the table, and I think there's more ways to commercialize that and bring in some capital, which is what everyone needs.
Are you confident that it would be marketable to, not only rugby fans, and could that create opportunity for more bums on seats, more eyeballs on broadcasts? The fact that they would get a little bit of, clean air, NRL and AFL season will obviously come kind of in halfway through a potential rugby championship in that window. Do you think you could sell that to the masses? That okay, get this in your heads, guys. We're going to have, it would require a lot more marketing than we currently see from the Pigeon just across the way here at Moore Park. But do you think people would get behind it?
Yes, because we all know that with the exception of cricket and then tennis in the late Jan, there's no other sport really doing from an Australian perspective then. Yes, there's the A-League, but it is an opportunity to strike whilst a couple of the other sports, the big players, are asleep there and they're warming up for their seasons. So I think it's a great opportunity to have your premier players playing, and then people get gripped by what they've seen, and then they might want to continue to watch the Super Rugby unfold. And I think it's an opportunity. I think it should absolutely be explored. And what a bonanza of rugby it would be to be having Six Nations and Rugby Championship rolling into it. A great opportunity, I think. And it's good that these discussions are being had, because I think they should have really been had 5-10 years ago.
Look, it'd be a shock to the system, wouldn't it? And
it needs a shock, though, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, that's a fair point. I guess, would you get the quality of game from the outset, Christy, though? And, quality is a loose word when it comes to the Wallabies at times, through clearly Rugby Championship in July. I guess
the Brumbies Crusaders game, that was
excellent
about
point
as high quality game
point,
from the Brumbies that you've ever seen.
And I guess you got to get, Wallabies camp would start January 1, wouldn't it, really? Month or 6 weeks off after the spring tour, and then, those same guys come back in and go to work in January in the heat. And look, it would be warm, but they've played in warm conditions before. Did it on the weekend in Super Rugby, and I guess that's, is there any difference between playing in terms of the actual conditions, the heat, etc., playing Super Rugby and Test Rugby? You're still playing rugby, right? So, look, we've used the term circuit breaker for various things previously in the past on this pod, haven't we? That would be a massive circuit breaker. I think a good of the global game, you'd have to say that it would be a step forward, and it's been put in the too hard basket for too long, hasn't it? Just the sheer weight of getting, both sides on board. And let's be fair, it is kind of, the Southern Hemisphere being they're the ones doing the major moving here. So I guess what that gives them a little bit of leverage at the table around, okay, guys, well where can we squeeze a bit of money out of you elsewhere? And maybe that's the thing. Does it align better for broadcast and everything else? And does that going to affect the, generate better bottom lines for the Southern Hemisphere nations?
I tell you what, I think the other thing it would do, how often do you go to an international game, and you don't see the gold jerseys because you've got jackets on? Wouldn't it be great to be able to go to February, March games?
A lot of short sleeve jerseys being sold, I'm sure. And
seeing the Wallabies or Wallaroo jerseys out there proudly on display, because you're not covered up by black jackets. I think it's an opportunity to get crowds more involved and engaged, because it might be 20 degrees at night. Not every night is 35 degrees, is it? Every now and again, you're going to have a hot one, right? But, you look at the South Africans on the high veld at times, there's not many jackets out there doing the rounds, and they're all drinking their Castle Lager, having a great time. I think it's exactly what Australian rugby needs.
We'll watch those meetings eagerly up there. We'll probably get some news bites out of that pretty soon. I'm sure the British and Irish scribes will be all over it up there. Watch this space. A couple of quick ones to finish, mate. One from Art Vanderlei of Seinfeld fame, complete with a picture of Georgie Costanza himself. What's the latest on RA's ongoing pending legal issues? The Melbourne Rebels in one camp, and Lalakai Foketi, who went across to the Chiefs, I think got injured in the preseason, so is sidelined at the moment. Any updates on either of those, or are they kind of just in holding patterns?
I think the Lalakai Foketi one, maybe. I know that the RA wasn't going to back down from that one, and they were being told by many, many people that, no, you shouldn't. This is, Lalakai, unfortunately, has made a mistake there, and you can't afford a precedent. From a Rebels perspective, that's not too far away, I think. Probably you'll hear news in the next month.
So where is it at? Is it still at mediation? Is it headed for a courtroom standoff?
I think it's headed for a courtroom standoff for now. Like sometimes things move pretty quickly towards the end, but yeah, that's not far around the corner. And both legal teams are naturally very confident, and it could be explosive. That'll be a very much a watch and see, and maybe sit back and hopefully that things don't explode in someone's face.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a serious subject, this one,
Yep.
and I know it's been pushed back and back, hasn't it, over the last couple of years? But yeah, like it has the potential to be a costly exercise for someone.
Well, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't believe you're a lawyer.
No.
But is there genuine, from what you know, is there a genuine feeling out there that the Rebels feel that they've got some kind of legal standing here?
Oh, absolutely. Well, they think that. That's why we're at this point in time.
Yep.
I don't think chicken's been played here by either camp. I think they both think they have a strong legal case. We'll see.
You're going to get along, mate? Where would it be? Would it be here in Sydney or be down in Victoria? No, be in Victoria, wouldn't it?
I think in Victoria. That's where it was lodged previously.
Okay. So, if anyone who enjoys getting out and watching courtroom battles, that might be one to check out. And, mate, finally, Super Rugby AU. Now, talking to a few Waratahs the other week, they were, effusive in their praise of that tournament last year. I think everyone in Australian rugby, stakeholders wherever you land, could see that this was a worthwhile exercise. The third tier has been a problem for Australian rugby for so long. This felt like the right fit, an extra 3 games plus a final for those teams. We saw these players that have now come through, at the Waratahs in particular, so far this season. Will it be back again in 2026?
Yeah, I'm almost certain it'll be back again. I haven't actually, these questions came in pretty quickly right at the end there. But I don't, how I reported it last year was it was likely to be an expanded competition. There was looking like there could be involvement from the islands, and some of that money could be DFAT money from, in the same way that the Australian government's, 600 mil into parts of the Pacific. I think there will be a similar argument, which has already been made around rugby. Is
David Pocock really driving that?
Yeah, and we've seen a little bit of coverage around that over the last week, and that hasn't really changed from what it was 6-8 weeks ago. I think Daniel Mills from Rugby Australia, who's done some fine work in that kind of space, has been very, very influential in ensuring that rugby remains front and centre of some of those islands like Fiji. And it's a political issue, isn't it? Now it's political football. It's not just rugby, but it's an expensive game these days. Hundreds of millions of dollars at stake.
Yes, I think we all look forward to that competition hopefully returning later in the year.
It'd be great if that happens as well. I think, it needs to be longer, and everyone is crying out for that, particularly given that Super Rugby competition is so short. So fingers crossed.
Hopefully there's a bit of an answer for you, Alex Lee. And finally, mate, one from the Mayor of Orange, late to the party, but he just wants to give you a shout out for your work. And everyone, I think, will be aware who listen to this pod, the situation you're going through, to keep, your skin in the game and the way you carried yourself. So a big ups from the Mayor of Orange.
Cheers. Yeah, it's been a messy one.
I know you've had a lot of support from a lot of people out there too.
Yeah. And look, it's been truly very much appreciated. It's not been fun at all over the last 8-9 weeks, really, for many, many months. There's been backroom stuff happening at the Roar. Who knows what will happen there, but I know that there's a strong audience that loves their rugby. I think there will be an absence of rugby coverage if it indeed goes under, but he's hoping in many ways that it doesn't, and if someone else, we'll see what happens. But appreciate that. Thank you very much, the Mayor of Orange. Last one, Six Nations. We cannot leave a pod by saying, boo-hoo to the Poms, right? Like what an unbelievable tournament it's been so far. But Ireland turning up, I don't know if you did see it. Some great, fine performances. Jamison Gibson Park. We're seeing James Ryan just getting stuck into people like your Henry Pollocks and so forth. A great tournament.
It's been a belter, and I was kind of torn on this one because who doesn't love to revel in an English defeat, and certainly one of this scale. But in our punters club, I had them beating Ireland and then also total match points under, I think, 48.5. And, of course, it didn't get close on either count. So I read the tea leaves completely wrong there. So, yeah, let me have your your disgust on that one. But yeah, look, it's flying, isn't it? Even Wales really giving it to Scotland for all but the final 10 minutes on the weekend, and the Scots getting out of jail to avoid what would have been a crushing defeat for them after their loss to their victory over England the week prior, where they played so well. Italy probably a little bit disappointed with their effort in France, but they were in that game for a while as well. So look, they love it up there. It's great to get on and watch the minis if that's all you got time for, as is my case these days on a Sunday. But those riding the last rites of Ireland probably taking some of their own medicine on Sunday morning.
Isn't it an example though of being mentally up for a game? But it's Super Rugby International. Ireland were up for it. Mentally, they were up for it. The missed tackles from Ellis Genge don't reflect well there around where he was. But, some of the memes of Steve Borthwick coming out.
I haven't actually. There's a good rabbit hole to go down.
There's a couple of good ones that are there, and we don't have to talk too much about the royal family. But
that's a slippery slope.
It's really brought this tournament alive, and 18 months out from a World Cup, it's not the worst time to have a little bobble. But I don't think anyone's writing England off. But it now just starts to, I can't believe people are going, is Borthwick the person that should be there? Should he be sacked? Like, they won 12 straight, and they've lost 2. I think anyone writing England off, it would be mad. But I think that Scotland-France game is going to be an absolute cracker in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, at Murrayfield, that will be Edinburgh will be humming for that one. Fascinating tournament underway, and I think just kind of gives way to a fascinating World Cup once we do get to that knockout stage in 2027, and hopefully some of you might have some tickets for it. Righto, mate. That's it for us for another week. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. The first 3 pods this year have been really well received. We love your feedback. Keep it coming. Keep the questions coming in. We're having a great time doing it again. There's some wins. There's some talking points. There's some news. There's a lot happening, Christy, and we'll be back again next week to rip in once more.
Can't wait. I'm excited. Big Super Rugby round this week. Queensland Reds back. Les Kiss, and can the Brumbies continue their mojo? Force find a win. I can't wait.
Bring it on, and bring it on right back here to the Schmidt House. This time next week, we'll be back again to pick up round 3 and everything else going on in the game. Cheers.